I think, like, with people being afraid to be associated with the queer community, there's this one very nice quote from, so, like, we actually interviewed, let me sort of find this. Yeah, so Suniti Nam Joshi, she's a lesbian poet and writer. Like, she writes fables. So she's like a fabulous, like, sort of like Aesop's fables, but like a queer, like, feminist version of it. And we
Mm-hmm.
did an interview with her. Like, you should definitely check it out, like, on AOI. She's like very, very wise. She's like, I think, in her 70s or something. So she's been queer and she's been a writer for really long. And she's been a part of, like, that kind of lesbian feminist movement. So she said, okay, get your heterosexual friends to protest on discrimination on the grounds of sexual orientation. It's safer for them. And it's actually true. If you yourself are not queer and like you have that security key, like, okay, I am heterosexual, then you don't need to be afraid of associating with the queer community, because like you don't really have much to lose as someone, like, if I was in the closet, and I probably wouldn't be able to bring up the issue of LGBT rights in my family discussions, but someone who's heterosexual has that space to safely say, is to be able to have these discussions with their peers. Like, they are not going to be, you're not going to be scrutinized to the extent that a queer person will be scrutinized, or you don't have to deal with the fear of being outed. So I think, like, what's the worst thing that can happen if you bring up, like, LGBT rights in your conversations with people who are homophobic? Like, maybe they'll change their minds. Like, maybe they'll be like, ah, तुम तो कुछ activist person बन गए or something. But it's not going to lead you to, like, ideally, hopefully, it won't make you lose your job. It won't make people, your own friends, see you very differently. It won't make your family disown you. So in many ways it is safer for you if you're heterosexual. So, and so you don't need to be afraid, like, of associating with the queer community. If not anything else, like, I mean, be proud of being able to, like, understand us and, like, associate with us. Like, like I said, like, you have a lot to, like, people have a lot to learn from the queer community. So why be afraid? I think at the very basic level, like, educating yourself and spreading as much information and creating information. Like, so many of us are content creators, like, in our lives. So, like, in the work that we do. So actively, like, involve with, like, have clear voices on whatever platforms that you run, or like, on whatever work that you do. Bring up things in your workspace. Bring up, like, if you want to, like, interview a queer person, or like feature a queer book or things like that. Donate to causes, like, even like for the COVID, when COVID thing was happening, and it's happening. There are so many fundraisers that are specifically for the transgender community, because they are being hit especially hard, or like, for sex workers who are also trans or queer. And I think, yeah, so I think, and also, just as an ally, if you know what are the kind of resources that are out there, I'll actually, like, share, like, we have a very extensive queer resource guide, which has the names of, it has publications, it has organizations, help groups. I think if you know people who are queer and who are having some trouble, be that person in their life to really help them out. That if you have, like, a queer friend who wants to find a counselor, there are queer affirmative kind of counseling available that is specifically, like, for queer people. uh, and yeah, like, talk about it to people. Like, don't be afraid to sort of be the party people who says ki, like, oh, this is like a homophobic slur, or like, explain in a very, like, reasonable way to people ki, you are joking about it, but someone around you might be, feeling very out of place and feeling that they won't really be accepted. So, like, bring up those things. Don't be afraid to, like, bring up these things. I mean, I think it's always good to sort of, like, do, like, a comparative analysis in your head. Like, why are we putting all the pressure on queer people to do all of this work? Like, if it's easier for you to do it, then do it, like, for sure. And yeah, I think, yeah, and I think, like, just like exploring queerness in all of the work that you do, sharing movies, sharing resources, creating resources. I think, like, just as much as visibility as is possible, it's always great, and being useful to queer people and making sure that you're not making them uncomfortable or asking too much of them. So yeah, I think, like, those are, like, I think even understanding what it means to be an ally. I think also, like, yeah, turn up to protests. I think that's great. I think, like, very few people, like, turned up for the protest against the trans bill, which was, like, not a great thing, because we should, like, try to as much be places where you can just go and like you can assist as much as possible, like, help out your friends, help out your queer and trans friends. Yeah. And I think it's always good to remember that, if someone is like, if you have like a debate with someone in your family about something that is queer, like it's better you do it than the person who's queer do, do it, because I mean, it would be like a stressful experience for someone else to get involved, like, to constantly have to defend themselves. Like, be the person, like, it's also like, what they call emotional labor. तुम अपना emotional labor दे सकते हो. You are in that mental space to not be shaken up by a conversation like that. So have those conversations, like,
Yeah.
like, yeah. Yeah, and I think it's a good thing to remember that allyship is also not just about like it's your it's not just about uh, it's like, oh, there are these people that I have to help or something. It's also about being more open as a person. It's about being empathetic to the people right around you. I think I still have like relationship with some of my close friends where I'm not really able to open up to them about like my queer side, because I still do get questions like, oh, why are you so obsessed with being queer and everything. And I think when you actively, and that is the thing, sometimes when you actively engage in these things, you become that straight friend of yours in front of whom like your queer friend can be like completely themselves. Like, you are reducing one wall. Like, you're like breaking down one wall that a queer person might have around you. Like, you are like allowing the space as your like space as a friend, as a boss. You are like allowing that space, that those relationships to be much more open, and to be like much more give and take, and understand. And it's so, yeah, like we often think कि being an ally is कि like उफ ये करना है, वो करना है, ये भी करना है, वो करना है. But actually it's about like there are people around you whom you love, who are queer and trans. How best can I make sure that I'm a good friend to them, or I'm a good person to them, or I'm making someone comfortable in a space. So yeah, I think it's a lot about the best versions of ourselves that we can be as well.